Newcastle upon Tyne. To the casual observer, it's a city defined by its bridges, its industry, and the legendary energy of the big market. But Newcastle is a city built atop a fortress. For 2,000 years, this has been the literal front line of the north. From the Roman fort of Pons Alius to the jagged walls of the medieval keep. In the 19th century, this city was the engine room of the world, fueled by coal and sweat. But that progress came with a price. The areas around the castle became slums of the damned, and the river became a graveyard for those trapped by poverty and the press gangs. The Tyne doesn't just have its history, it has a memory made of iron, stone and blood. Tonight, we look at 5 hauntings that prove the North never forgets its dead. The Poppy Girl. We begin where the city began, the castle keep. For 3 centuries, this wasn't just a landmark, it was a pit of absolute misery. It served as the county jail, a place where men, women, and children were packed into damp, unheated stone cells to wait for the gallows. The most famous spirit here is the Poppy Girl. Legend says she was a local flower girl imprisoned for her debts. While in the jail, she was reportedly beaten to death by her fellow inmates for the few scraps of food she possessed. Visitors in the King's Chamber frequently report a sudden, impossible scent of fresh lavender or poppies, a smell that cuts through the stagnant, damp air of the stone dungeon. In 2012, a visitor reported being physically pushed by invisible hands, while a female voice whispered a single name into their ear. More chillingly, tour guides have photographed a figure in a ragged pink dress standing in the shadows of the spiral staircase. She isn't a shadow, she's a floral-scented memory of a girl who died in a place that knew no mercy. The Witch Trials of 1649. High above the city centre lies the vast windswept green of the town moor. To most, it's a place for a walk, but it's actually the site of Newcastle's darkest hour. In August 1649, during the chaos of the English Civil War, the city invited a professional witchfinder to cleanse the streets. He used a pricking needle to find the devil's mark. For every person he found guilty, he was paid 20 shillings. In a single afternoon, 16 souls, 15 women and 1 man were marched from Guildhall to the town moor and hanged in front of a jeering crowd. They were buried in unmarked graves at St Andrew's churchyard, but their energy remains on the moor. Walkers report a collective rhythmical chanting that suddenly turns into a frantic, high-pitched screaming when the wind picks up. The earth here holds the energy of mass injustice, a residual echo of 16 people who were murdered for a fraud's profit. The shadow of the Black Gate. Between the keep and the cathedral sits the Black Gate. By the Victorian era, this medieval gatehouse had been converted into a vertical slum. Dozens of families were packed into single rooms, living in squalor in the shadow of the railway. The energy here is territorial and heavy. The most reported entity is the Shadow Man. He's described as void, a blacker than black silhouette that stands over 7 feet tall. In the 1970s, a night watchman reported seeing the figure glide effortlessly through a locked iron door. As it passed him, he felt a bone-deep cold and heard a low, vibrating growl in his chest. Staff today still report the sound of heavy, rhythmic footsteps following them up the wooden stairs, only for the sound to stop the moment they turn round. The Shadow Man is the silent, angry guardian of Newcastle's forgotten poor. Henry of the Cooperage. Down at the river's edge sits a building that defies time. The Cooperage is a timber-framed relic of the 1500s. It survived the Great Fire of 1854 that levelled the rest of the quayside, but it couldn't escape its own tragedy. The ghost here is known as Henry. In the late 18th century, the quayside was a hunting ground for press gangs. Thugs hired by the Navy to kidnap men and force them into service. Legend said Henry was cornered inside the building. He fled to the top floor, barricading himself in a room as the gang hammered on the door. He either jumped or was pushed from the upper stories into the dark alley below. Even now, with the building boarded up and silent, Henry remains. Passers-by report seeing a pale, desperate face staring out from the top floor windows that have been locked for decades. Late-night workers on the quayside have reported the sound of heavy furniture being dragged across the floor and a man's frantic shouting echoing from inside the empty timber frame. Henry is still trying to barricade the door, forever trapped in his final moments of freedom. The Silent Scholar. Our journey ends in the Sanctuary of Silence. The Literary and Philosophical Society, or the Lit and Phil, is a cathedral of knowledge. With its towering mahogany bookshelves and winding wrought iron galleries, it feels like a place where time has stopped. But the silence here is rarely empty. Staff and researchers have reported for decades that they are never truly alone in the stacks. The most persistent resident is the Silent Scholar. He's described as a man in a high-collared Victorian frock coat, often seen on the upper gallery levels, leaning over a rail as if searching for some specific volume. The haunting is most often auditory. Researchers sitting in the absolute stillness report hearing the distinct, crisp sound of heavy pages being turned just a few feet away, or the rhythmic thud of a book being placed on a table, only to find the room empty. Some even claim to have been shushed by a cold, invisible presence when they spoke too loudly. In the Lit and Phil, the dead aren't just remembered in the books on the shelves, they're still reading them. Newcastle is a city of layers. Roman stone, medieval blood, and Victorian coal. The dead are not distant here, they're right beneath the pavement of the big market and the bookshelves of the Lit and Phil. Which Newcastle legend chills you the most? Let me know in the comments. And if you're ever walking the quayside at night, keep your eyes on the upper windows. Stay close to the Northern Spectre and we'll keep the lights on for now.